Coming up on this special edition of Latinas, we go one-on-one with the Latina executive producers behind two Oscar-nominated documentaries. Latinas starts now. Welcome to Latinas, the only Emmy-nominated show that's all about nosotras, created by nosotras, and I'm Tinabeth Piña. On this special episode of the show, I'll sit down with two powerhouse executive producers behind not one, but two Oscar-nominated documentaries, Soledad O'Brien and Rose Arce, the creative minds behind The Perfect Neighbor and The Devil is Busy. We'll dive into why they chose these stories, what they hope audiences take away, what it really takes to bring such compelling documentaries to life, and why it's just as important to have strong Latinas behind the scenes as much as on screen. Let's take a look. Did you ladies, as journalists, ever think that you would eventually be called Oscar-nominated Rose Arce? Oscar-nominated Soledad O'Brien.
So technically, we're not nominated. When you do a short, your directors, right, get nominated. So we're part of our project. No, it never. No, I have to be honest. No,
yeah, I'd be all over it.
Right?
Oscar-nominated film. I think the thing is, if you did this for the statues, you'd be disappointed. We did this. I mean, both of these films started out with a just game-changing, horrible, thing. And in the case of The Devil is Busy, we began, in a sense, working on this film, almost a year before Roe versus Wade was overturned.
Because we knew that Roe versus Wade was going to be overturned, and we were very interested in understanding, okay, we need to be there to document what the implications are. And that meant then a year earlier, okay, one, we need to get funding. What is the story? We have to find the story. Where do we tell it? Who will let us in? And whose point of view? What perspective are we taking on this story? And so when we finally, found Tracy, who is the security guard of the clinic, we just knew she was so remarkable. She was such an interesting person. Someone stood up in our screening in London and said, oh my God, you could sit there and watch her eat cereal and you don't. And it's kind of true. She's so interesting and so complex.
We tell the guests they're going to be protesters at the bottom of the hill. Don't stop, drive past them. Before I send them in, I look in their eyes. I say to them, you're safe now.
She checked a lot of boxes. One, you don't really hear about people who are working in a clinic who are deeply religious. If I went out in the street and said, I'm doing a doc about a very religious person and an abortion clinic, most people, I think, would assume it's the protester I'm talking about. So I loved that we got to explore religion through her eyes. And I also think she's a complicated person. There's a twist, obviously, in the middle of the doc. It's a doc short, runs about 30 minutes. And I think it's a very real take on what it's like to be inside an abortion clinic post Roe v. Wade. So yeah, there's a year of work that goes into then eventually finding a compelling character to really be your way into the story.
In terms of The Perfect Neighbor, how did you find that? Because I don't remember hearing about that story.
I live in Florida, so in Florida it was a well-known story. And it was a classic stand your ground case, Ocala. So it had made the news. It was well known. It had turned out, which I hadn't realized, that our director, Gita Gandbir, her family knew the victim well, and so that was crazy. So that I did not know. And so I think you were the one who said, did you know that that woman who was killed in that stand your ground case, Gita knows that woman. That's practically
she
family
calls her
for
family.
Gita.
Oh,
yeah,
They're very, very close. And so I think for Gita, that's really where it started, because it was like having something horrible happen to a family member. But in the state of Florida, it was a case that people had heard about. I mean, it made the local news.
And nobody jumped on this to do a documentary. I should say, Gita called us and said, this terrible thing has happened. This woman is basically one of our family members in our eyes. I don't really know what's going to come of this, but you guys have been used to pursuing news. What do you think? And I said, listen, you go and you do whatever you need to do. We'll support you with resources. We called a Latino cameraman that we know in Florida and said, just go. And initially, I think that all we thought was that we were going to bear witness to this. We didn't know it was going to turn into a story, if it did what we were going to do with it. And I think Gita went down there asking herself, like, other than supporting the family, what can we do?
She has said, I'm a director, I'm a filmmaker, so that's what I do. Like, when you sit around thinking, what do I do? You're like, well, I am a filmmaker. I guess I just go and start thinking about, could this be a film? How do you tell this story in some capacity?
And I guess it became very clear when not that long afterwards, the lawyer for the family handed her a thumb drive and said, well, I don't know what you could do with this, but here's, there was like the tapes from the cops and notes, and it took them a minute to see that there was any value in it. I mean, it was just this messy stuff, and Gita, I think, one thing that she has as a filmmaker is that she was an editor. She spent much of her career as an editor. So in order to understand what this was and whether it was of any value, she took it and she took the time to string it out in chronological order and improve the audio enough. And as she watched it, a story unfolded of how this community got to where it was. And you could feel the building tension. And also, it did something that I think us with our journalism background feel is very important, which is that I think that in order to regain the trust of the viewers and the people that consume information out there, which has been lost to a degree, you bring them there with a certain amount of authenticity. There's nobody that is talking to you and relating backwards.
And
right?
the same, I think, about The Devil is Busy, right? At the end of the day, it's not, hey, I'm a reporter and this is my take on what I found when I went to this clinic. This is the story of this woman. We follow her through her day. And I agree, I think at a time when probably trust in journalism and maybe even specifically journalists is at an all-time low, the idea of being able to stay out of it and just say, this is the story of this woman. This is her story. It just is her story. I think that that's been very helpful and very valuable.
This is a high-stress situation. Any day, you're not subject to go home from here.
Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to serve with patience, for blessing me when I feel I'm not worthy, for protecting me. In these things I pray, amen.
I rely heavily on my faith while I'm here because the devil is busy out there.
How does it feel in terms of representation? Because these topics are, in one essence, about representation. You, as Latinas, are representing behind the scenes. So there's different facets of representation happening within this. How does that make you feel?
We've had this conversation about our projects sort of even just when I think they connect to people because, this is about a policy, right? I mean, it's a story about a policy, and sometimes that's a tough story to sell, to tell, to get people excited about. And so, yeah, I think representing stories that are challenging and true and making sure that they're diverse. And then, I think sometimes we feel like we're banging our heads against the wall and doing documentaries, but making sure that stories about all kinds of people, maybe the ones who aren't invited to the table very often, are heard and have an opportunity to be told in a broad way. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's hard, honestly. So I think it made it even sweeter that something that was serious and important and really worthy of being shared, to me, it felt like I'm really glad that this kind of a story, that these kinds of stories were considered and nominated.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's worth saying that it's not just us, the entire team of people. This has been the issue of their career. It has been the issue of our career. This is not like we just decided now to documentaries about people of color. We have, from the moment we entered journalism and then filmmaking, dedicated ourselves to lifting voices that are not heard. And as Latinas, it's been particularly important because it's part of our life experience. And our directors, same thing, that this is the work that they do.
So clearly there's a sense of pride here to be able to tell stories that matter, but not only matter to the masses, but that matter to you.
Oh, sure.
Individually.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I mean, I think for every human being in any job, anywhere, you want to be proud of the work you do. You want to end the day saying like, wow, that was really worth it. It was a hard day. It was a lot, but I'm glad. I mean, for me, it was always, I'm glad I was sent to cover this story because what I got to contribute mattered. Yeah. It mattered to getting it right. It mattered to making it better. It mattered to the team. And that was kind of how I always judged it. And when being there sort of didn't matter, I mean, Rose and I covered a lot of, right? We covered Hurricane. Did you cover Katrina?
That's how we started.
We covered Katrina together.
It was our first story together.
We covered the Haiti earthquake. I remember us trying to figure out how to get into Haiti. You know, I mean, CNN had no black reporters going to Haiti. I know, it seems so crazy, but...
Eventually, yeah.
And they were kind of like, we got it covered. Why would you need to send a black reporter into Haiti? I mean, it sounds so insane. And so we've spent a lot of time fighting to make sure that diverse people cover diverse stories so that there's... that our life experiences can add value to the kind of storytelling that comes out. And that's been really nice to then be able to bring it to my own organization and say, here's our take on the kinds of stories that we want to tell.
Sure. And my hat's off to you too, because it's scary to leave something that's comfortable.
Direct deposit is an amazing thing, man.
The 401k plan was awesome. I missed the 401k plan. It was huge.
But it's also frustrating to have to literally sit in meetings and sit with people, 20 people, a nice number of producers, and think, oh my God, they don't know that Puerto Ricans are Americans and we're about to go do a documentary on Latinos. Like, this is scaring me. So, I mean, that honestly is so terrifying. It really does offset the amazingness of direct deposit every 2 weeks into your bank account. You know, it's just very disheartening, right? When you're just like, wow, I don't know how to think about the fact that we're trying to do a doc on Latinos in whatever year that was, 2019 or something, 2017 or something. And from the very beginning, like we don't even understand this. You guys as a group don't really get that. You know, that's actually, I mean, no joking. It's really scaring and it's really disheartening.
And that's only one of, I'm sure, many stories
Lordy.
that you have. Which, it's infuriating.
So many.
The last story that I tried to sell before I left CNN was, and it was still the end of the Obama administration and the beginning of the first Trump campaign, was the number of undocumented children crossing the border. And I came in and I said, this has gone from a couple of hundred to several thousand, and you have a surge in immigration, and this is going to become a huge issue. And they said, no, it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had pitched, the last story I pitched before I left was doing something on, we had done Black in America, Latino in America, gay in America, and I said we should do poverty in America because at that time there were lots of articles about how the face of poverty, many people in poverty were very much employed, sometimes 2 jobs, 3 jobs. So this idea of like, poor people are, the hobos riding the rails of the little, it was completely, and I remember my boss, I should name him, but I won't.
No.
But I should, but I won't, but I should. He said, ew, who would want to see that, right? And you're like, well, you know what? If you ever take the subway here in New York City, you would realize that, like, you don't know what a poor person looks like. They look exactly like you. They're heading off to their job. They are white and they're Black and they're Latino and they're Native American and they're immigrants to this country. Like, it doesn't look like I think you think it looks like.
Look, I think that's one of the beautiful things about both these films. When you see the line of people walking into the clinic, they're all the women you know, right? And I think one of the incredible things about The Perfect Neighbor is that it defies a lot of the stereotypes that you think about a working class community. The conversations between the police officers and the people, the diversity within the people, the fact that they took care of each other's children.
The best part is when the police are like, all right, so whose kids are these? And the white mom is like, well, they're my kids, right? And she's talking about a group of white kids and Black kids who clearly are not her kids.
Right,
But she means it, right? Because she's saying, in this neighborhood, all these kids play together, and whatever adult is out here is the one who's responsible for them. And that was, not a lot of neighborhoods can say that, right?
And a really interesting little fact is that the neighborhood people never called the police themselves. You know, that is where the police failure is incredible, is that it never entered their mind as police officers that she might be the problem or that she might be the threat. I mean, you see them, you know, they're young, they're friendly, the neighbors don't look at the cops like they're a problem, there's no kind of tension between them, like everybody's trying, right? But nobody looks at her and says she's a threat, even though the whole documentary has this growing intensity of like, wow, there's this law that she could weaponize.
911 said I just took the emergency. Are you having problems with the neighbor's children?
Hello, Sheriff's Office. Were any of you guys ever here messing with this lady?
No. We were playing football.
Sheriff's Office.
I called because the kids from across the street, they shouldn't be screaming and running around.
Okay.
All the kids like to play. Sharon said they can't walk or even throw their football over there.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
Several kids out there right now are screaming, yelling.
9 times out of 10, that lady over there probably called. Oh, I know. It's like the kids.
At one point, I don't know if you notice it, but they talk about her having a gun and having waved a gun. The moment that a police officer heard that a woman was waving a gun around children, like you don't think of this as a problem, as a crisis, yet they didn't.
They didn't. Yeah. Having done these two stories now, what's next?
So we have a 6-part series coming out on PBS, so that is literally what is up next. It's actually a fantastic look at really remarkable women.
The series is called She Was First, and it focuses on women that were first in the arts.
Misty Copeland, for example, is a great example of a person who, you know, really sort of fought her way through to become a first. And I think hearing her backstory of how she got there is really interesting.
And does it continue? Is it just those 6 episodes?
Well, you know, it's so funny. That's kind of a question. You know, when you have a baby and then you deliver that baby and someone's like, oh my God, what a cute baby. Are you having another? You're like, I just had this baby. Someone actually did say, we did a launch party the other night and someone's like, I think this could be a 2nd season. I'm like, girl, this has not even aired the 1st season yet. Give it a moment. But yeah, listen, you can't go wrong elevating the stories of people whose stories really haven't been championed very frequently, and especially with people who are so interesting and so remarkable. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think it could easily go on, but we're going to get this one across the finish line first before we think about that.
And so New Yorkers and people that are familiar to CUNY, Jacqueline Woodson, who does young adult books, who lives in Brooklyn. Misty Copeland certainly is.
Kat Cora is a chef. She is amazing. We absolutely love her. Marin Alsop is a conductor who tried her best to teach me how to conduct an orchestra, in which I failed frequently.
And the big one who it wasn't enough that she had already had a bunch of firsts. She decided to have another big first is Ruth Carter, who was nominated.
Who just had another first.
Yeah, her first is she's nominated for, I guess,
now the most nominated,
the most nominated Oscar person, woman of color, or black woman for Oscars,
What would you guys have told your younger selves when you were like 10? Like looking at what you've achieved up until this point. Look at your 10-year-old self. What would you tell her?
You know, my parents were immigrants to this country, and I think a lot of folks who have come from immigrant parents, you're really taught, like, you put your head down. I think especially Latinas, you know, you're never taught to, like, don't overplay yourself, don't brag on yourself, put your head down and do the work. And so I think at 10, I was sort of like that, like, put your head down and just do the work, do the work, do the work. And so I think to a large degree, we're reaping the benefit of just do the work. And good stuff comes by that, and work hard. I don't think our success has been some big shock, and I don't think it's been overnight, and I think it's just been chipping away and trying to do a good job and tell stories that we think matter and bringing along the people who also think it matters. So I think I was kind of the same as a 10-year-old, like put your head down and just do the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's anything I would have said to myself, and I think that's something particularly that I feel now is that you have to play the long game. You know, a win is never necessarily a win forever. And I do feel like now there are many things that I thought over the course of my career I wanted to accomplish, not for myself, but we wanted to make a difference. We wanted to move the needle. You wanted diversity in journalism because you thought it was important. You know, you thought there was going to be a movement that you were going to contribute to, you know, that you thought made the world a better place. Some of those things have been pulled backwards by people of all across the ideological spectrum, but you can't wake up every day and say, oh, everything I did has been a disaster because it is a long game. It is the course of your life, and you have to get up every day and say, okay, so what am I going to do today, you know, to fulfill my dreams, my goals? You know, what am I going to do? Because, you know, it isn't like, okay, I checked that box, you know, any more than it is I won that award.
There's so much, I think, feedback for people of color generally, and maybe Latinos specifically, right? This idea of like, we were at Sundance, and the talent for Latino filmmakers was just breathtaking. Like you just, it blew my mind. You couldn't even imagine some of the things that people were creating and doing.
Two of the biggest awards at Sundance.
Absolutely amazing, amazing, so great. And so I think maybe just if I had known that as a kid, like there's just so much potential. Don't think to here, think out to there, because there are so many people doing so many interesting things, and you know, the narrative may not always support what you think is possible, but the truth is it's very possible. There are so many insanely talented Latinos doing so many great things.
Yeah, we should mention them. They Dream and American Pachuco.
Oh my God,
Luis
They
Valdez
Dream,
and William Caballero's story about his life, Puerto Rican. Fantastic documentary.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So, I mean, you know, if you're a Latino filmmaker, you're in such great company of just really you know, interesting minds trying to tell the next untold story.
You know, and in the hopeful category, both of those films funded in part by Latino PBS. And, you know, the head of Latino PBS was at Sundance. Smile on her face, muscles flexed. The fact that PBS has been cut off from government funding, she's in it to win it.
Still working, yep.
Yep. She was there walking around saying, okay, ideas.
Right,
how do we win this? How do we get the funding? We've got to make more docs like these. Docs are great.
Sure. And that just leads me to my final question, which you guys in a way kind of already answered. With playing the long game, with keeping your head down, seeing what the possibilities are, is that part of the advice that you would give to up-and-coming Latina filmmakers who want to be documentarians, who want to be telling these stories?
I was on a Zoom the other day with Gita, and she gave such great advice. So I'm going to steal some of her advice and then just regurgitate it as my own. But Gita, this is really your advice. She said something that was so genius. She said, if you're a young filmmaker, work on other people's films. She's like, volunteer to just do films with everybody you know all the time. She's like, you will learn so much about filmmaking by making films. Make your friends' films, make everybody's films. And I thought that was extremely pragmatic advice. Rose and I have often had that advice for news journalists, you know, this idea of like, if you want to go cover stories, go cover the story. Just go start telling stories, do a podcast. I don't care if you have 6 people who will listen to your podcast and they're all related to you. Like, just go and do it, because you learn so much in the doing that is so valuable. And so I thought that was really excellent advice for a filmmaker. Maybe the best advice you can give, you know, just go and do it.
Like Nike.
What a great slogan. I should use that for something someday.
Use that one too. That's it. Is there anything else you guys would want to add?
No, that was great. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate
You
it.
can watch the film. And HBO Devil is Busy, Netflix, The Perfect Neighbor. And The Perfect Neighbor, the family has set up an organization called Standing in the Gap in Ajika's honor to try to help other people who are trying to defeat Stand Your Ground and who have been victimized by the weaponization of racism.
I appreciate you guys coming. This is very important work you're doing.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
A huge thank you to Soledad O'Brien and Rose Arce for sharing their insights and behind-the-scenes stories with us. From their dedication to telling powerful, timely stories to their hope for what audiences take away, it's clear why their work continues to resonate. I'm Tinabeth Piña, and that's a wrap on this special conversation. Don't miss these incredible documentaries that are currently streaming. Hasta la próxima. If you like what you just saw, and to support your favorite programming here at CUNY TV, please consider donating at tv.cuny.edu/donate.